Good. Okay, please confirm if you can see my screen. Is my screen visible? Okay. So first and first, having understood uh, the first section we had last week, it's a good idea that we see how this is implemented. And the basic idea of building any automation is you must have a mental model of what you are trying to build. In other words, you must understand how the process is being done manually. And the example we are trying to look at yesterday, remember the idea is that we are not just trying to build automation in this class. We are trying to have an understanding of each node, what they do, how to configure them. So knowing this will allow you build automation on your own, having known how each of those nodes work. So while we are practicalizing all these things, we are not just building the workflow. I don't want you to have that mentality. I want you to know how to use, how to configure, and how to connect those nodes to build your workflow. So when you are in your business, you are running your business, or in your office, mentally, you are capturing each of those tasks that you are performing and you are mapping them to their respective node. So if you say, for instance, I want to collect data, you are not thinking about the data alone. You are thinking about this node can help me collect this data. So you are thinking in node, you are thinking in steps. So if you are saying you want to send message, you are not just concerned about the message, but then you are thinking much more that I know the node that can send this message for me. All right. So that is the goal of this class. But then let's have a visual representation of what the idea we are trying to build. Let me just quickly, let's say we are trying to collect data. Let's say maybe user data, just an example. We are just trying to assume a process here that we are trying to build. And based on the first class, let's say we want to build something. uh, I think we said user eligibility yesterday. Now let's say this is how the system works. We want our user to fill a form, and if they fill that form, we want to do certain thing because it's an eligibility form. Or let's put it in a banking system. Let's say before you are able to open an account, when you fill the form, we need to check if you are up to certain age. Maybe let's use two conditions here. Maybe if you have a valid ID card and you are up to 18 years, that is when you are eligible to have an account. So the steps now involved, we need to collect user data. Let's say maybe collect data. So when we collect the data, the next thing we need to do is, how do we now identify if this user is up to certain age and you know they have the valid ID card? So we can say maybe check, sorry, I can spell it. Check maybe age, valid age and ID. That's the second step. And maybe another step can now be uh, if they are eligible, that is, if they have a valid ID card and they are up to 18 and above, then they can vote. So maybe we can say send message, period. This is just what we are doing. First of all, we collect the data and then we check their eligibility and then send them a message to tell them that okay, you are able to open an account here or you are not able to open an account. So assume this is the process in your office, in your business. This is how you list the steps that are involved in that process. Now let's try to visualize it. Now every workflow can be expanded, but the idea is you start it little and you implement that, and you discover more idea begins to come and you begin to expand it. So no workflow begins as a very huge workflow. They start small. So now let's try to visualize this and let's see. Let's say I have my form here. This is the node that will collect my form. Let's say uh, form submission, for instance. So this is the node that will collect. That's why I'm telling you, you think in node. You think in node. So while others are thinking on how do we collect data, busy piecing up, picking papers around, drawing tables and all, you are thinking in nodes. That what node can help me collect this data? That's how you are thinking. All right. So we know that this node will help us collect the form. Okay. Let's say we have this other node here now. This is to validate. Let's say validate or check, or let's say, yeah, validate criteria. This is just grammar, guys. Validate criteria and say maybe this one should just send message. Now I've represent my steps in a node, but we can look at this diagram and tell me what is missing. Please, let's make this interactive. What do you think is missing on this diagram? Please, can someone just unmute his or herself, look at the diagram, and tell me what do you think is missing? Of course, you must understand uh, the manual system very well before you can identify what is wrong with this diagram. Okay, please, someone just unmute yourself. Let's make this class interactive. Promise, Samuel, Jacob, and Info. Any idea? Please, can someone hear me or I'm just talking to myself? Hello? Can anyone hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir. We can hear you. We can hear you, sir.
So what I was asking, what do you think is missing on this diagram? Do you have any idea?
To execute action.
What do you mean by execute action? Okay. Now remember whenever you collect form user details, let's not even think about the computer. Just in your office, you have a paper where your user will submit their details, fill in their details. One of the things you will do with those details is to store them. So what is missing here is the storage. So when you collect users data, what do you do with them? Even before you start processing with those data, you must store them first. So that is what is missing here. So I will know that I will be needing another node that will help me to store user details here. Maybe save or store, save user data. So is there any other thing here that is missing? Okay, I'm not sure. So now the next question you need to ask yourself, if this is my process, what is that thing that will start this process? And it's obvious that this process will kickstart the moment the user fill the form. So which means our trigger here will be on form submit. Our trigger will be on form submit. On form submit. On form submit. So and automatically our trigger now becomes the form itself. This now becomes our trigger. And if this workflow runs successfully, it should pass the data to be saved. And one of the things we can use to save, just basically, we can use our Google Sheet. We can save that on Google Sheet. We can save this on Google Sheet. And when Google Sheet is done saving, then we have to check. We need a node that will help us check if the user meets our criteria. So maybe a couple of nodes we can use, but we'll just use a very simple node. We can either use the if node or we can use a node called the switch. Hopefully we can use both of them, but then let's use just anyone. So we're gonna be needing a node that will help us check route, maybe check routes. here. So to send message from this our workflow, you will discover our message will be sent in one of two routes, in that those that are eligible should receive a message that they are eligible, and those that are not will also receive a message informing them that they are not eligible and stating the reason why they are not eligible. So which means we will have one of two routes. So which means we can say one of our send message can said legible, eligible, and another one can just say not eligible, not eligible, not eligible. So maybe if they are eligible, we'll go that way, and if they are not eligible, we'll come this way. So I can keep extending this workflow as big as possible, depending on what you want to achieve. Now let's just try to see how we can. Now, of course, if they are eligible, we want to send them a mail, a Gmail for instance, or mail, just mail simply. We're gonna send them a mail, and then we're also gonna send this ones too a mail. Now we'll begin from this place. We listed the steps that are involved, how we do it manually, and then we try to represent it in a form of diagram and try to identify what will kickstart that workflow, and then how those nodes will help us in those manual tasks. All right, so I will just switch back and forth to my n8n, n8n.io. I believe we already have our account ready. I will just sign in from here. Let me quickly log in. Okay, so just create a new workflow. First thing first, we need to add the first step, which is obviously the trigger. And from our diagram, our trigger here is on form submit. We will still do another version of this that uses another form of submission so that you can understand every node that we used on this workflow. So remember, the goal is for you to know what each node does and how to use to configure them. Okay, so first thing, our trigger is on form submit. uh, I will just go for on form submission here. So like we said yesterday, every node on n8n has three parts. We have the input, the configuration, and then the output. Now for our trigger here, we need to give it a title. Let's say maybe user user form, or let's say user registration form. If you have a description there, you can put it. And the next thing we need to do is to add the elements. Elements are those uh, fields that can allow us get user details. For instance, you can add an input field that allows you to collect name. I will just collect the full name at once. We'll leave that as an input text, and we'll set an attribute. I said yesterday that an attribute, uh, they are those additional details that we give to our input field, and one of them is we can set a custom name, field name. We can add a placeholder. We can set a default value. I think I explained all this yesterday. But then the one we'll be using is just the required that ensures that the users enter a value. Otherwise, they won't be able to submit. So we'll toggle that on, and then we'll add another one. Let's say maybe we want to ask for their email. For an email, I will set it to email so that it will ensure that the user enters a correct email format. At least the mail should assume the correct format of an email. Also, I will set that to be required. And let me add one more or two more. Maybe gender. The gender actually is not necessary, but I want to use it to explain another node. Let's take gender, and let me use a drop down for that. I can say maybe male, and let me add another option. Let's say maybe female. Okay, attributes required, and toggle that on. And let me add one more or two more. Let's say, do you have a valid ID? And I'll just use a drop down also and say maybe yes, and say no. And let's also set that to require. And what else? Let me add another element that gets the age. We just set that to number. So I think I've represent certain things here, which will be okay for now. I can also add one thing. Let me add one additional thing. Okay, let me leave it at here. So if I click on execute here, let's see. Okay, it opens a form. Let me quickly fill that. uh, Steven Jacob, and let's say Steven gmail.com. I don't know, it's a male. Yes, and maybe it's 20 or 30 years old. And then I will just submit that. So the moment I submit that, you discover there is an output here from our trigger. Our trigger is giving out an output that was received. Okay, so which means our node is working properly. And you can see from here, it's saying that one item, which means this node is passing out one item. Let's also try to name that node to maybe user form. Okay, everything is done perfectly. Now from our diagram, we are to save the data the user is submitting. So which means we need a node here that will help us to store every user details. And one of the node we can use is, I will just click on this plus here. You can use a Google Sheet for that. So I will just type sheet and I will just go ahead to select append a row in sheet. Append a row in a sheet. So if I click on that, now I will need a couple of things here, but then before I do that, I will go to my sheet and try to create a template there. Maybe I can say name or full name now. Full name. Then what else? Let me close this. Email, gender. I can try to get their email and maybe gender. Then do you have an ID card? I'll just say have ID. Then maybe age. Then I said I wanted to do something there, but let me spare that. Maybe after I can do that. So this is all we have set on our trigger. Let me set this one to user eligibility form. So maybe the sheet name here, I can say, let me just call it users. Okay, so how do I connect it? If I go back to my, remember we just inserted a Google Sheet here that will help us store those records. Already, since it was connected to the trigger, is taken as input the output of the trigger, and that's why you have these details here from what it was receiving from the trigger. Now I need to set my credential. I had other credential I've set here already, so but for the sake of this class, I will set another one. And let me click on new credential, and I will just sign in with my Google. I explained credential yesterday. Let me just use this real quick. Just select the email you want to use, and then you just grant access. Okay, so I'm done and it has been connected. So now the resource is within the document. What we want to use is within the Google Sheet document that we just connected to. And the operation we want to perform is that we want to append row. And the document we want to select, remember, we gave it the name user eligibility form. So we just come here, right here, it's there. We'll pick that, and the sheet is titled users. So I'll just come under the sheet and select users. Now, the moment I select user, you discover this field pops up, those are the heading, this item here, this label here, those are the values that pop up here. Okay, we talked about expression yesterday. Now if you look here, you will see this icon that says fix and expression. Now fix simply means whatever you input there will be what will appear there whenever the user submits a form. But then that's not what we want to do, because we will not be having just one user that will be filling the form. So in order to ensure that our value is dynamic at every point that the form is being submitted, what we need to do there is to set it to an expression. Okay, so on the full name, I will drag from the input part here, I will drag the username straight into there, and I will do the same to the email. This is what we'll call mapping: gender, do you have ID, yes, and age here. We are not doing anything much. So if this is done correctly, if I click on this execute button, it should add that record to my sheet here. So let's try that. Click on execute. Okay, you see it said node executed successfully, and you can view it that truly the sheet has received a record here. So let's confirm. Boom. So you see our sheet automatically receives this record. So whenever the user submits their form, it will be stored on this sheet automatically. It will be stored on this sheet. Okay. If I should execute my entire workflow again, let me submit another person. Let me say maybe James Jackson, and maybe jj@yahoo.com. Let's say this time around, this fellow receive is female, and let's say this other person doesn't have an email and is just 16 years old. And if I submit that, my form has been submitted. So let me confirm that by going, you see, it said workflow executed successfully. So if I check my form, my storage now, you see another user has been added. So this is automatic. Another user has been added. All right. So we have successfully achieved the first two nodes of our workflow. Now the next is to check their eligibility. Remember we said they must have, for them to be eligible, they must have a valid ID and they must be 18 years and above. So how do we achieve that? I told you there are two ways, but then let's see if we can experiment both of them. Let's use an if. We can use uh, the if node or the switch node, but let's just stick with the if node. Now this is the if node right here. Now the if node we use one or two value. Remember we talked about Boolean data type yesterday. It it will yield either true or false. It cannot yield both at the same time, and that's why we are using the if node. When you need an outcome that will only yield one out of two, then you can go for the if. So if it's true, that is, the user is of the age and also has an ID card, so it will turn out to be true. And if it doesn't, if one of them is lacking, either he or she has the ID but is not up to 18, that is also false. If is up to 18 but doesn't have an ID, that is also false. So our condition can only be true if and only if the user is of age and also the user has an ID card. Okay, so let's configure the if node and see how it looks like. So what similar to every other node, the input, the configuration, and the output. The same to every node. Now you see this part that says condition, condition, and we have value 1, value 2. So what do we want to check here? The value 1 is, I want to check if the user have an ID. Now remember, if you go to the trigger where we configured the have an ID, we set a drop down and then we set it to two values, yes or no. So we want to say if this have an ID is equal to, right here is a string because it's yes or no. I talked about strings yesterday. Is equal to yes because we use yes on our trigger. That's why I'm using yes here. So if it's equals to yes, and let's add another condition, you see, logical and. Now, the logical and can only yield true when both conditions are true. So if the two conditions you are testing are true, the logical and will execute true. If you want your value to be true, provided that one of the conditions is true, then you can go for or. I will repeat. If you have two conditions or you are testing for two conditions and you want your execution to be true, provided that one of those conditions is true, then you can go for or. If you want your execution to be true only when both condition is true, then you can go for and. So in our case here, we want the user to be of age, that is 18 and above, and we also want that they have an ID card. So the two conditions we are checking for, we want it to be true. That's why we are using and. But if you want either of them, that the user can still register or they can be declared to be eligible if either they have ID card or they are above 18 years, then you can set it to be all because you are not concerned if they meet with both criteria. But in situation where you want them to satisfy both criteria, then that situation is where you will be using the and operator. And that's why we are using and here. So I will say and the age. Now remember the age is set to number. So I will come here and set to number is, we want it to be from 18 and above. So it will be greater than or equal to 18. So that's all I'm doing here. That's all I'm doing here. So if this condition executes, it's going to result to one of two values, which is either true. True simply means the user is 18 and above and has an ID card. False simply means the user is either the user meet with one of the criteria and did not meet with the other, or did not even satisfy any of the criteria at all. That is false. So from this simple workflow, if the user, what's wrong? Okay. If the user fills the form and meets with the criteria, our workflow will go through this route of the true. You can see true here and you can see false here. So if it is true that the user is 18 and above and also the user has an ID card, our workflow will follow this path of true. If it is false, it will follow this path of false. Okay. So now the next part of our diagram, let's see, is to determine the route and send them message depending on the route that it follows. Okay. Let me zoom in this. So let's set this other part, and let's send mail. We say we are sending them Gmail. Let's just search for Gmail. I'm actually using the nodes that are common to our daily activities. So what we want to do with a typical Gmail is to send a message. We can add label. Hopefully we can touch this, maybe, I don't know. You can delete a message, you can get a message, you can get many messages, you can mark a mess. These are typical uh, tasks you can perform on your normal Gmail right now. But one of them is we want to send a message. So I will just click on send message, similar to every other node. Input, settings, or your configuration, and then output. So if this user is eligible, you see, is on the true route. This is for user that is eligible. Um, oh, time is fast spent. Okay, let me do this quickly. So from our form or from the user form, you can pick the details here. So the resource here is message. All we want to do is message, and the operation is to send message. That's the operation. So who are we sending to? Similar to what we have been doing, it's no different. We are sending to the email right here. Whatever the user submits, that's what we are sending to. And also, let me pick from the form. We send an email to this place, and the title of the message with the subject of every email. When you try to send in an email, every email must have a message. Let's say uh, eligibility status right there. So the mail type will just go with text, and this is the message body. So how do we do that? The same way you send every mail, we can say, dear, uh, let's refer to them by their name, dear, the name, and say, let's just, you are eligible to bank with us. Full stop. So I'm not doing anything here. You can execute it if you want. Let me rename this. I forgot to rename that. So we can say eligible. So let me just duplicate this node and connect to the first. And let me set this one. Change the name to not eligible. And the only changes here is you are not. Let's just put a not here. You are not eligible to bank with us. So okay, we have successfully built our workflow here the same way we have it on our diagram. So if we test, let execute. Can someone just give me his or her email so that I can test it? Who do I have here on the call? Promise, Samuel, Jacob. Can someone give me an email? Let's test if this works. Hello, can someone hear me? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Please give me your email.
Okay. NWBC Promise 007
Ndu, NDU,
BISI
ISI, okay,
PROMISE Promise 007 at
07
gmail.com.
at gmail.com. Okay, let's say this is NDBC Promise. I'm filling the form. NDBC Promise. I guess it's a mail. Do you have an ID card? Yes, hopefully.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we set his age to maybe 25, which is above, and I will just submit. And the moment I submit, you see the route the workflow went through. It went through, trace the green color, it went through like this and then goes up like this. Please check your email. Let's see if you receive any mail. Let's confirm that you receive. But then let's go to our storage here, and you see automatically we have our storage here populated by itself. So even if there are 100 people accessing our form, it will all be captured here immediately, and each of them will receive their mail depending on what route our workflow goes through. Please confirm if you receive the mail. Now,
Not yet. Not yet. I'm trying to confirm. Not yet.
okay, please check because it's already said sent here. NDUBISI promise.
I think it went to my spam.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So you just confirm that you received the message. Now, this is a typical example of a workflow. You can implement this on your in your business. Now, another way we can do it, you can actually, I said earlier that I'm gonna do another version of it. We can actually create a Google form that we can share to our customers, or that we can be using, that we can share to people for them to feel, and this same automation will happen the moment they fill the form. So all you just do is to set your workflow and share the link to them. The moment they fill the Google form, you just watch your workflow doing the job. Now, this is the essence of AI automation. The same task you do manually, you just assign that to your system and it handles that for you. All you just need to do is
Create
grab your
workflow.
cup of coffee, use your time for other activities. Now, just as I'm doing this, I am just thinking of other things I can do. Ideas is already popping up. I can actually come here and maybe set status, message status, MSG status, and I will try to monitor who have received message, who are yet to receive their message. So you see, just a small workflow like this is already growing big in my head. So this is how you think about automation, the mental model. Okay, this is working. What else can I add to this workflow? So you keep adding, keep adding. This sys node can help us undo anything that has to do with form submission. Can help us handle that. I don't know. I just received a message that I'm having small minutes left. Please, do you have any question based on this? I don't want us to exceed 1 hour. Any question? Okay. If there is no question, let me disconnect this. And I said I was going to use another. The goal is to explain the node. Even as much as we are creating workflow, the goal of this class is to explain those nodes. So I was saying we can actually use uh, switch here. So let's try that and see switch. Is in place of if, we can also use switch there. Okay. Under the mode, we set it to rules. And what is our routing rule? We need the value here, which is the ID card, should be equal to the same thing we've been doing. If it's equal to yes, it should go through that route. We can add another routing rule here. This time we check for the age. You see, it has already discovered it's a number. We set it to uh, greater than or equal to 18. Just as simple as that. I will just connect that and connect this. And I'll be sure everything is well connected. Now, observe something here. This is 0, this is 1. If it's true, it goes like this. If it's false, it comes like this. So let's be sure the input are received. Okay, yes, correct. So if I execute this workflow, maybe I should, let me pin one particular data here. Okay, let me pin this. Okay, I've pinned that. If I execute this workflow, from this point, executes. So you see, I've sent another message to promise and it still worked. So when you come to a point that you want to determine which route, which path your workflow should go, you can achieve that with two nodes, either your switch or your if node. You can achieve that. Now, another node I want to explain. Uh, Remember, I'm just explaining node, even though we are building workflow. I still want to explain nodes. Another important node that you will need is the edit field node or the set node. Now, what this node does is to help you. I remember in the first class when we spoke about the node, I made mention of this particular node. Every workflow you will build, you will be needing this node, and it helps you to clean your input. Now, for instance, this is the output from the previous node, which the edit field is taken in as an input. Now, let's assume you don't need the whole of this as input. You want to select what you need. Maybe we just need, since we are not considering the age and the email, or we are not considering the age actually. So we can just select what we need. I'll just click on add input field and just say I only need the full name. Let's give it a name, full name. I only need the full name. It's a string. Let me add another one. I don't need the gender. I need the ID. Yes. And then I also need to know their age. So you discover we leave the gender out. So if you want to streamline the data you want to pass to the next node, you do that with your set node. So if I execute this step, you discover, okay, I have an error here. It said it's not connected. All I need to do is to connect my set node. Let me disconnect this one here. Let me delete this. So I'll just connect that. I've connected it. So if I execute that, I thought I pinned the data here. Yeah. So if you execute that step, let's fill in something. And let's say promise James. Let's say Paul JP at gmail.com. So the gender, let's say male, and yes, and 20. So if I send that, you see the workflow runs successfully, and you see we have our data here without the gender because we have filtered the data that we need from it. So this is the whole idea. This is the workflow we'll be building for today. The time is already up and I don't want to stretch us behind proportion. The assignment I will be giving out is try uh, to see a workflow you can build with this node that we have worked on. Build that workflow and submit. Okay, let me show us how to save this workflow. All you need to do is to actually download, click on download this workflow, or you can simply share, but I don't want you to share. Just download it. Once you download, click on these three dots here and click on download. Once you download, you see it has been downloaded. You can see that uh, on your download. If you go to your download on your system, you see it there, right there. So upload that to your Google Drive. Share the Google Drive to me on the group share the link to your Google Drive on the group that contains that assignment. Now, please grant permission so that when I'm trying to access it, Google will not ask that you give me permission. Set the permission so that I can access it. I will repeat myself. Create a simple workflow with what we have done. Create, don't just copy my own workflow. I want to ensure that you understand how to apply each of those nodes. So create a simple workflow consisting of those nodes that we have talked about today. Download, I just show you how to download your workflow, upload it on your Google Drive, and share the link on your Google Drive. Now, I need you to attach a document, explain what each of those nodes are doing in your workflow and why you use them. Explain your workflow, explain why you use each of those nodes on your workflow, explain the job of those nodes. Then I need you to give me a rough sketch, do a sketch also like this in your document, attach it together with your drive, on your drive with your downloaded workflow, attach it on your drive and share the link on the group I will go through them, and I'm waiting to see your workflow, waiting to see your understanding of what we have done today. I discovered the session has time out. No worries. Do your assignment and submit before the next class. If you have any question, you can do well to ask your question on the group or any of our social media platform. Ask your question. You can even ask the question under the uh, YouTube session, under the comment section of this video on YouTube. Your question will be attended to. See you next week. Uh, don't relent. Keep practicing, keep working, and keep understanding. Bye for now.